All right, so today we get into finding X and Y intercepts, kind of doing a little review as we work our way towards graphing systems of linear equations. So we're going to do a little review here as you see a graph, and we're going to label some of these parts. So if you look at number one's kind of pointing to an entire section, all right? And we call those quadrants. So the top right is quadrant 1, the top left is quadrant 2, the lower left is quadrant 3, and the lower right is quadrant 4. Okay, so that's kind of a view of the graph. Now, number 2 is pointing to that black vertical line, which is the y-axis. The y-axis is always vertical. Okay. Number 3 is pointing to a point that you see on a graph, and we call that an ordered pair. Number 4 over here is pointing where the x and y-axis meet, which we call the origin. And the origin is always the point 0, 0. And last but not least, number 5, that is the x-axis, the axis that goes vertically. Okay, so again, those are the important parts and vocabulary as we get into this section, which we kind of going to review slope. And we're going to get into graphing 2 lines now instead of 1. So we're working our way towards that. So we're trying to kind of put this stuff back into your heads again. So over here, if we're given a graph, okay, and it's asking us to find the x and y intercepts. Well, the y-intercept is on the vertical point, right, which is right there. All right. So again, x is always 0 on the y-axis. So this will be the point 0, 4 because it's up 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And the x-axis right here is at 2, and on the x-intercepts, the y is always 0. So this would be the point 2, 0. Okay. So again, this would be your x-intercept. This would be your y-intercept. Make sure your zeros are in the right places. Okay. If you write that as 0, 2, okay, that doesn't put that in the right spot of the y-axis. Okay. So if we go through here and identify these x and y intercepts, okay. So for example 1, and we'll say the left one, okay. If we look at it, we can see a point here on the y-axis and a point there on the x-axis. Well, it ends up being the same line it was right up above. So the x-intercept is 2, 0, and the y-intercept is 0, 4. Okay. If we try the middle ones, well, here's the y, and there's where it crosses the x-axis. So the x-intercept is at 4, 0, and the y-intercept is at 0, negative 3. And then if we look at the third graph, the one on the right, we got going through here and through here. So the x-intercept is 1, 0. That's right here. And the y-intercept is at 0, negative 2. Okay. So notice any y-coordinate below the x-axis will be negative. Any y-coordinate above the x-axis will be positive. Okay. And then same thing with the x-axis. Anything left of the y-axis is negative. Anything right of the y-axis is positive. Okay. So let's move on to the next page here because we'll start to get a little bit more in depth. And then I'm going to have you pause the video and work on a couple. So it says the x-intercept. What is the value of the of y at the x-intercept? Well, again, the value of y always at the x-intercept is 0. Just like the value of x at the y-intercept is always 0. So if we're given an equation and asked to find the x-intercept, like you see here, okay, we're going to put a 0. We're going to put a 0 in for x since we're finding the y-intercept. Okay. So we're going to plug in a 0 here. 4 times 0 is 0. That just cancels it out, right? And I'm left with 2x equals 16. And if I solve for x, x equals 8. So that means the x-intercept of this equation would be 8, 0. So if you go over to this graph, and then we're going to have to go by 2's here to fit it. So 2, 4, 6, there's 8. There's our x-intercept. Now, if we do the same thing, but now we look for the y-intercept, we're now going to put a 0 in for x. And that goes to nothing, because that's 0. 2 times 0 is 0. We're left with 4y equals 16. And if we divide by 4, y equals 4. So that means our y-intercept for this would be 0, 4. And 0, 4, if we keep the same, is right here. And if I try to my best to draw a straight line connecting the 2 points, there is our straight line, using the 2 intercepts to make our line. Okay. So again, I want you to try example 2 and 3 on your own here. And again, try to get into that, they're both in that ax plus by equals c format, all right? And try to find the x and y intercepts. So I want you real quick to pause this video and then give you some time to work on it. And then when you're ready, we will go see how you did through examples 2 and 3. Okay. So we're given this equation, x minus 5y equals 5. So again, if you want to find the x-intercept, the first thing you want to do is put a 0 in for y. So by doing that, that goes to 0, and I'm just left with x equals 5. That means for this graph, our x-intercept is 5, 0, the point, 5, 0. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's the 5. We go by 1s there. Okay. Now do the same thing for the y-intercept. I'm going to plug a 0 in for x. So that basically just goes away, right? That's gone. And if I divide both sides by negative 5, y is negative 1. So our y-intercept would be the point 0, negative 1, which is right down here. And then our line would be that. So those are your two intercepts at 5, 0 and at 0, negative 1. All right. Now example 3, and again, using our x-intercept, once you find your x and y-intercepts to make the graph. So again, if I plug a 0 in for y, I'm looking for the x-intercept. So that basically takes that to nothing. I'm left with 4x equals 6, and if I divide by 4, x equals 6 over 4, which basically equals, it was a negative 6, by the way. So that makes it negative 6/4. So this is basically negative 1.5 or negative 1.5. Okay. So our x-intercept is negative 1.5. Well, here's negative 1, negative 2 is there. So negative 1.5 is going to be kind of in the middle there. Okay. The best I can to get that in the middle there with the smartboard. It's a little off. Now, if I want to find the y-intercept, I'm going to put a 0 in for x. Don't forget to write the negative 6 this time. So that becomes nothing. So I'm left with negative 2y equals negative 6. I'm going to divide by negative 2 to get y equals 3. So our y-intercept for this would be 0, 3, which is right there. Okay. And now I just connect my dots as best I can to make my straight line. Okay. Probably be easier if I just use my straight line tool. I can make a much better straight line. Because again, you want to get into the habit when you're graphing these. You want to draw straight lines, especially when we start drawing 2 lines, because the straighter your line is, you're going to be able to find the intersection point a little bit better when you do get to that. So there's a nice straight line right there of how it looks. So that is the notes on graphing X and Y intercepts. And tomorrow we'll actually get a homework assignment on that. So hope you found this useful and to get some good practice on.